Welcome to another episode of the Grow My Clinic podcast. My name is Ben Lynch, and today I'm excited. I'm excited because I've been looking forward to this interview for a while. It's with Jordan Walsh. I'm excited because Jordan's an Adelaide boy. I'm an Adelaide boy. He's also 27 years of age, so am I. And I've watched his journey from afar, and all I can say is I'm inspired. What this guy has done is incredible. What he's doing right now is incredible, as you'll see as we reveal through the conversation what he's up to. So Jordan started Adelaide Green Clean. He started cleaning when he was at university, and then it really evolved into a big business when he was very young, finishing off his law degree. And that evolved into a multi-million-dollar business. They were servicing 1,000 events. 1,000 events. They had a team of 400, and he was like 24, 25 years of age. He then exited that business. He won Telstra Business of the Year. And since exiting that business, Adelaide Green Clean, he started Iconic Growth, which is a business consulting firm, an advisory firm for people who are making about $2 million or more a year. So he's dealing with some high-level entrepreneurs. It's also got an investment arm where they've invested in things from painting shops to cafes. He speaks my language, coffee. What you'll find quite interesting, it takes a little while for us to get into the discussion as we reveal Jordan's story and background, but I think you'll appreciate from his background what some of the ingredients have been for his success so young in life. But there's one key thing that I really took away from this interview. Jordan speaks early on about he saw this pattern in successful lawyers. The pattern was that they could apply their knowledge. They could apply it, and that led to commercial success. He then translated that into business, and his one key thing was, too often we think about it, strategize it, overthink it. And look, planning's important, but you've got to take action at the end of the day. You've got to say, yes, step up and make it happen. And sometimes you just need to figure it out as you go along. So what I love is that he's an action taker. And you'll see that throughout the interview that he keeps coming back to, at the end of the day, I just made it happen. I said yes and then figured out a way to bring it to life. Now, for some of us, and I also tend to be a little more conservative, you may find, this guy, he's got an appetite for maybe taking risks and really having a bit of variety in his life. And that's okay, but I think the principle stands true that applying what you know, taking action on the opportunities in front of you is so important for your journey and achieving the goals that you want. Listen in. Takes a little while for us to get into it, but he's got some real gold points as he works his way through, and even some very specific points about how he scaled from startup. Enjoy this episode, and we'd love to hear your feedback on what you took away from this interview with Jordan.
This is the Grow My Clinic podcast by Clinic Mastery, where we help you deliver amazing client experiences to grow your clinic.
Jordan, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this one for a while because I've seen parts of your journey from afar through the wonderful social medias. But for those who haven't heard of you, can you give us a background as to your story, how you got into business? Because you're not in health, but you are a business person and at such a young age have had some incredible success. But where did it all begin for you?
Yeah, so I guess it probably came back to when I was like 13 or 14 and I loved sport, played cricket, lived in Scotland when I was younger, had a cricket academy, so didn't do much of year 10 at school. I wasn't the best of students. And then ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be a lawyer. So that was my big thing. I remember my mum used to say that when I was 5 years old, I want to be a lawyer. It was just what I wanted to do. So in year 11, I went on a cricket tour around England and started to see a lot more of the world. I hadn't travelled prior to that. I'd lived in Scotland the year before, but year 11, I really got to experience England and started to see that the world was a big place. And what happened is I came back, I knuckled down and got the marks in year 12 to get into law school. So So a Bachelor of Laws at Adelaide Uni. So I did law. I found it extremely boring. I don't think anyone's ever gone through law school and fully found the content enjoyable. But what I found really interesting was the commercial elements around being a lawyer. So the fact that good lawyers are the ones that can really think commercially about things. So not just that's the law, it's how do you apply. So I found the practical application of whether it was sport or like I did sports law as a subject, media law. I even found criminal law and these things. I found them really interesting. There was a lot of practical applications. So then when I was, and I'm a little bit rusty on the years, but I think it was 2011. 2012. I got a scholarship to go over to New York and study at an environmental law school in New York for a semester. So it's called PACE Environmental Law School. It's top 3 environmental law schools in America. It's like the heart, people there call it like an Ivy League of environmental law schools. So it's the top. It's one of the top.
And you
at the time
you wanted to do environmental law, or it was just that was by chance, or?
Nah, I wanted to do sports law. So I wanted to be a sports lawyer. So at that point, I didn't realize it was an environmental law school until I got there. I just went for the experience, and when I lived in Scotland, I loved living overseas. So I just went for the experience.
Cool.
So I got there, realized it was environmental law school. At the time I was cleaning. So I had a couple of cleaning contracts, just offices and stuff like that. When I went overseas, I got one of my best friends to do those contracts. I was maybe making $100 a week off of those contracts, off not actually doing anything. So was over there, did my 6 months, came back. And when I came back, it was my final year of law school. So I came back into my 4th year, lost the cleaning contracts. And just because we were charging a bit for them and we weren't necessarily providing a service.
Right.
Then what happened is I went and got a job at Cash Converters. So my final year of law school, I needed a job. So I needed to live. I went and got a job at Cash Converters, and I was in the buyers and loans department, and I was there for 4 months, and I ended up leaving because I won a cleaning contract. But I was there for 4 months, and it was one of the most valuable 4 months that reflecting back on it, was one of the most valuable 4 months you learn. Well, you learn to deal with all different shapes and walks from life. And it's one of those things where you learn to negotiate, and you learn to become commercial around your negotiations. And I was 21 at the time.
Yep.
And I had a really, really good manager. It was Cash Converters in Grenfell Street in Adelaide. I had a really, really good manager.
Yes.
And it taught me a lot about, like, you could be negotiating on a diamond ring. You could be negotiating on something that's not actually worth anything, but someone needs $5. And you've got targets to meet, and you've got these different things, this type of thing. So anyway, I enjoyed that, but it was like I just worked 2 days a week. Then what happened is some guys that I know put up, does anyone know a cleaning company? We've got an office to clean in the city. And me being me, I just said yes. I just say, like, I don't do it all the time anymore. I do say yes a lot, but I just said yes.
Yes.
So I replied saying, I'll be down there this afternoon and quote it for you. So I went and got my mate Lockie. We went down there. We had no cleaning contracts at the time, but we'd obviously been doing the cleaning up until a couple of months before. We put on, wearing like slacks and a shirt, and we had notepads and this type of thing. And I've actually got a couple of photos from that site visit.
Wow.
Yeah. So because I was taking photos, because I was saying that we were going to go back and quote it based on material. I don't know. It was quite funny looking back on it. And like we were like stepping out the square meters and saying code language and everything. And I ended up quoting, I think it was $49 a clean. Yeah. It was a once a week clean.
Yeah.
So I went in. So that's middle of my final year of law school. Did my final semester. That contract ended up becoming what was one of our largest contracts. That contract was actually the office above what was to then be called Little Miss Mexico and Little Miss Miami.
Right.
The bars. So they fitted out the bar.
Yep.
And then they became the owners of the Royal Croquet Club nationally.
Wow.
So we were doing the Croquet Club, Little Miss Miami, Little Miss Mexico. They had a bunch of other businesses. We did the houses.
Wow.
Everything. So they were awesome. So we really that was hard. November that year comes around, finished law school, got a job, was working as a lawyer, did my GDLP and everything, did my graduate diploma in legal practice, got a job in the city. So what would happen is I had a little scooter at the time, like a Vespa. So I'd go in at like 4 a.m., clean the bar, go home, get changed, go into work. And it wasn't every day. Like we had like other guys that would clean some days, but it was a few days a week that I would do that. Then we picked up more contracts. So come May the next year, so I've been working.
And I was going to say, for those people that perhaps don't know the Adelaide scene so well, can you give us some specifics? Feel free to share what you can of like those sort of gigs. They became quite big, but did you have a big team, or what sort of demand was that for the work? Like you said, you went from $49 sort of a gig once a week to what did they look like?
I guess it was when I quit my job in May. It was the end of April, start of May 2014. When I quit my job in May, we had 4 staff, like 4 guys that were working with us, just mainly casual, because we were still cleaning the bars. And the festival season in Adelaide goes from October or September through to March. That's the festival season. So for anyone listening that doesn't know about Adelaide festival season, it's crazy. It's bonkers. One of the biggest festival seasons, I believe, and it was one of the biggest fringes in the world as well, with Edinburgh. So basically what we did is we had 4 staff. I quit. I found a friend who had an office. He was really good to me. His name was Len. He was really good to me. Sat in his office on South Road in it was a shop front office, had a desk, just did some weird stuff. And we just, like, I got called one day and said, do you do carpet cleaning? I said, of course we do carpet cleaning. We didn't. And then I thought I'll go and buy a $199 carpet cleaning machine from Godfrey's and I'll make the money back on the first clean. I went to Godfrey's and I was shocked. It was like $2,500 for the machine. I actually didn't have $2,500. So I was thinking, what am I going to do? And I booked in the clean for like the Tuesday, the next week or something. So anyway, I literally went onto YouTube and learned how to carpet clean and went and bought the machine, ended up paying the machine off in a week. And I was like, geez, this is cool. So nailed it as well. The carpets looked awesome. I now realize that machine is extremely cheap. Like you can pay upwards of $70,000 for a carpet.
Really?
Yeah, like a setup where this was $2,000. So the word is activity. We had activity going on. Like we had business development activity. We had cleaning activity. We were doing stuff. I see so many people sitting there now and they say, oh, we don't know how to get off the ground. We don't know how to do this. Go out and do stuff. Just do stuff, literally. Like I joined networking groups. We went down Glen Osmond Road in Adelaide. There's offices. Yeah. We just went and knocked on doors one day and just said, do you want a cleaner? We didn't get one successful contract, but what we did get is we got the supply of consumables like paper towel and toilet paper contract for Mitsubishi on that road just from knocking on the door. It wasn't worth much, but it was another contract.
Wow.
And looking back on it now, people would think you got rocks in your head to do stuff like that because there's no return on it. You make $4 off a carton of toilet paper. So that's kind of the lead into it. And then October that year, we did an event called Asia Fest. And that was our first event. So throughout that time, people say, oh, yeah, but how did you actually get work? It was literally activity. I'd go around with everyone. My thing is if you have something that needs to be cleaned, we'll clean it.
Yeah, right.
At the time, we didn't say, oh, we're just doing events because we ended up being mainly an events and stadium cleaning company. Yeah, we just created activity, did Asia Fest. What we actually did that event season, we actually ended up cleaning over 100 events. So
100?
Yeah, we did about 100 events in our first event season.
Wow.
We did Asia Fest. And then there were a couple other things as well. Like there are 2 really large companies and one of them I didn't realize, but at the time their board of directors, we're talking multi-billion-dollar multinational companies. Their board of directors said they wouldn't go anything for under $1 million in South Australia. And then another company, their service had dropped because they'd been bought by a bigger company and all of this stuff. And we just went as hard as we could. We found every event in Adelaide and we went hard. So for that first event, we probably had 10 staff now. Yeah. And they're all mates.
Yeah.
We probably went to 15 staff up till Christmas. So I had my first full-time employee, like as an office person. And then I got a call from a guy called Mark. And I had a conversation with this couple. Like this is quite a funny one. He called me and he runs a festival, One Adelaide. So he runs one of the biggest festivals in Adelaide.
Yeah.
And he said he found our website. I'd built our website on Wix. I used the Wix SEO. Like, didn't have an office or anything at this point. This was all just bootlegging it.
Yeah.
Like, I'd ordered Vistaprint magnets for the side of the car. So when I was in work mode, flop them on. I was still using the Jackaroo. And when I was talking to him on the phone, I said, how many, he said, do you have the capacity to service? I said, of course we do. He said, how many people do you need approximately? He said, there's about 70 cleaners a day. I said, yeah, no dramas. I had like 10 people on my books. Then, we scaled up. And from that point, we never dropped below about 100 staff on our books.
Wow.
And over the next 3 years, we cleaned about 1,000 events. We had huge amounts of PR around us, and we'll probably go into the points as to why, but we just did it. Like, I think too many people think about, I need a niche, I need a strategy, I need something. I'm all for that. Just to be clear, I'm all for that. You just got to get it done, as you would know. Like,
absolutely.
You don't know where you're going to be.
You don't. You're so right. And, I've been guilty of it in the past, especially when we're starting up. You kind of try and hypothesize or think about it, and you're like, you just got to do it. You just got to take some action. And even from the start of this conversation, when you said you saw the distinction of a quality lawyer was the application of law and being commercially successful and being able to apply it commercially. And really what you're doing is you've had the same approach in business is you've applied it or applied yourself. You've just done it rather than sit back and wait. Sort of said, yes, we'll figure it out along the way. Let's just make it happen. So when you go along in these early days and you're negotiating, and like you said, you reached out to a lot of people, maybe you're hustling to get these people on board. Can you give us a bit of an idea as to like, what were you doing? Like, would you, maybe some of the pragmatics, did you reach out via email, social media? Did you get them on the phone? And then sort of how did you play it from there? Because if you're building up, I imagine at that stage you perhaps, especially in the early days, didn't have a big brand or weren't well known perhaps at that point. How did you sort of get your foot in the door and make it happen, translate that into a contract with someone?
Well, I guess if you look at the practical elements of it, the first thing is that a city like Adelaide is easier to get in the door than a city like Melbourne. Mm-hmm. So practically for me, I would find out who the person was that I needed to speak to. Yep. And there would be less than 2 degrees of separation with that person for someone I know. Yes. So people that sit there and say that they can't contact this person or that type of thing, you can, especially in a city like Adelaide and where everyone's connected. And I found that the first 5 or 10 contacts we made were the hardest.
Yes.
But so practically it would come down to finding the best way to generate a lead is to, people think leads are going to be done through, and it depends what industry you're in, obviously, but it's even, we've got tech businesses, and I'll explain it later in this podcast, but we've got tech businesses that we still rely on contacts with people. I would just practically work out who I need to meet with. Like, for instance, if it was yourself,
yes,
I would say, okay, so Ben's in health. Who do I know in health? I know Daniel. Daniel probably knows him. If he doesn't know him, he knows someone that knows him. I'm going to go sit with a coffee with Daniel. I'm going to explain to Daniel, I really want to meet this person. Do you know anyone that knows him? And they might not help out. 99 times out of 100, they'll tell you no. But then the one that does do it, you then get the contact. And then it's flowing on from that. So that's how I got in the door. Then, because I didn't have a brand to be able to back up what I was saying about, it actually comes down to, I believe, a business comes down to how dynamic is the founder of that business. They have to be dynamic. They have to be someone that can relate to all different people. They have to be able to talk to the CEO of a massive organization, and they have to be able to talk to a casual worker that comes into that organization 1 to 3 hours a week. So then it's the ability to actually converse and build relationships. Like, the number one thing is, as you would be aware, it's building relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. And so then for you, you've studied law. Maybe some people are thinking, well, this guy's smart, which you are, and maybe knows how to speak as well in front of people. What about for some of those more timid people out there who might be saying, I can't do that. I can't reach out to people. I can't speak to people like that. What do you do? Because you do business consulting. You see business owners of varying degrees of personality and approach. How do you go about those people that say, oh, it works for him, but it wouldn't work for me?
Well, the first thing I'll say is I actually still get nervous meeting with people. So
Okay.
I
And
also
how do you
don't
approach that then? Do you have something that you go through to minimize that or give you some structure? How do you approach that?
I go into every meeting completely prepared. So preparation is key. So if you're sitting there and you really don't like meeting with people, like the number one thing is if you're going to own a business or be in a business, you have to get over that. Like you have to practically get over that. And in order to practically get over it, I believe you need to know what you want from that meeting. And one of the pieces of advice I give people is I get a lot of people asking to meet with me. And because of time restraints, I can't meet with everyone now, but I try and meet with as many people that ask. This is a really practical tip. When you meet with someone, my advice is if you're nervous, it's to outline the reason for the meeting at the start.
Right.
It's kind of taboo. People don't talk about it much. And I used to get half an hour into meetings and people still wouldn't know, like I still don't know why they're there.
Right.
Say if I'm meeting with someone that manages the head of a massive private equity firm.
Yeah.
And we're meeting with them to talk to them about something. I would go in and practically, this is a practical thing I would do. I would say, today I want to speak about these things. Reason for meeting, Ben, is these things. First of all, I want to talk about our podcast. Second of all, we want to talk about X. Third of all, I want to talk about Y. What I normally do, the first one is outlining the overall of what I'd like to talk about.
Yes.
The second one is the reason for that. And then the third one is what you're going to talk about first. And it's normally, but above all of that, I want to hear more about what you are doing at the moment.
Yes, right. So that's a great one because we're talking to health professionals in business. They're often meeting, other complementary businesses or services, other professionals. And often they say, I don't know what to do at that first meeting or subsequent meeting. So number one thing is be prepared, have some structure about it, and then clearly outline at the very beginning of that meeting the outcomes and objectives of that meeting so that you have a structure and that you leave with the results. So often, I've been guilty of this. You go to a meeting and then you walk away and you go, what did we actually decide on doing? I don't know. And then you're like, damn it. And you try and get another meeting and it's maybe months away. So what you're saying is be prepared.
Definitely. And outline it. If you're meeting with someone, if you're meeting with a potential client, the last thing they want you to do is waste their time.
Sure.
Just be, and look, that structure might get thrown out the window the moment you sit down with the person and they turn out to be someone who's just so funny and they just want to chat and everything, but they're not the problematic meeting. So if you sit down and someone's like, oh, what a day. Like, how good is this? Did you see the footy on the weekend? That gets thrown out the window. The meetings that are hard are the ones, and the reason people get nervous about meeting with other people is because they're concerned of the person sitting there saying, what do you want?
Yeah.
And that awkward conversation around, you just wasted my time. So tell them, this is what I want. Like, these are the reasons. But first of all, I just want to understand a bit more about what you're doing first. Let them talk and everything will be, that's a really practical strategy I use even today to meet with people. I have 10 meetings a day some days.
Unreal.
And that's the strategy.
I love the distinction there. We often talk about, and especially recently, people going and just starting all about them and the other person going, well, hold on, what's in it for me? And so I love the distinction of you saying, okay, you're setting out the objectives of what you want, but then you're always saying, tell me more about you. Like, what are you up to? And great distinction. So then tell us a little bit more about what you're doing right now in business. So you went through Adelaide Green Clean. You've exited that business a year or 18 months ago, and now you've moved on. Tell us a little bit more about what's happened since that evolution.
Yeah, so exited AGC. We grew it to 400 staff. We're a powerful company in the space that we operated in.
Yes.
So I started Iconic Growth. So Iconic Growth is a full service business advisory firm. we advise businesses that are doing $2 million revenue and above on how to grow and exit. And we sit on boards as well. And as a natural progression of that, we have started a company an investment fund called Iconic Ventures.
Yes.
So this is actually the first time speaking about it publicly, but towards late last year, so October last year, me and my business partner, so I've got a business partner, Jacob, who is the guru of all things. And I swore I'd never be in business with someone, but I'd never not be in business with him now that I'm working with him. And I think we complement each other really well. So we have started Iconic Ventures. So Iconic Ventures is a investment fund. We invest in businesses that have dynamic leaders, the ability to scale, and the ability to exit that business as well. So we work closely with them. So we've made 4 investments in the last 4 months. We made an investment into a painting business in Melbourne.
Wow.
So it's a painting business with about 50 staff, and we're helping scale them.
Yes.
We made an investment into an IoT business, so an Internet of Things business. So basically we build sensors, so hardware, and we've got a platform, and we put a huge amount of time and money and effort into building what we consider and what many consider to be the best IoT platform in Australia. So that's actually a substantial business. And then we own an events company that does event medical conferences. Actually, we specialize in running the technology and hardware and software for medical conferences.
Yes.
We also, and we also operate in the corporate space there. Adobe is a client.
Wow.
And we also invested in a chain of cafes in Adelaide.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's called Abbott's and Kinney.
You speak my
Probably
language.
heard of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, so we've invested in them, and I'm a director of that company. So
wow.
Yeah, so it's been an exciting time. We plan on doing 6 more substantial investments this calendar year. So right now I'm on the board of 6 companies. They're all ours, and we drive businesses to grow, and we operate a very lean model as well. So we use technology really, really well. So we operate a really lean model.
Yes.
And it's good fun. It's very stressful, but I've definitely found what I love doing, which is working with awesome people, as you were talking about before.
Yeah.
To grow something really special.
Amazing. So you mentioned about it being stressful, and it sounds like you're a part of many different businesses. You've grown a business. How do you manage that as a business owner? Because you're doing some incredible things. I think it comes naturally if you're running a business that there's stress, there's some anxiety, there's fear about what could be, or perhaps there's something going on right now that you're freaking out about. Like, what does Jordan Walsh get up to help manage that stress in your life as a business owner?
I guess there's 2 elements to this. The first is theoretical, the second's practical. So the first is that I believe so much in myself and Jacob that no matter what happens and no matter how stressful things get, everything's going to work out really well because we've done it. Time and time again, we're delivering results that internally we're really, really happy with, and we have great clients. So out of the investments, we advise clients, we have great clients as well who are really happy. So the first is the fact that I can, no matter how stressful it gets, we know that if we keep doing what we need to do, and like we're at the stage now where everything's just a process. We do things really methodical and really process driven, that we know that it's going to work out. Practically, I know my limits. I've learned what my limits are. So the biggest thing is I travel a lot. I catch anywhere between 120 and 200 flights a year. And for me, like if I'm on a plane and I've just had a massive day, and I just know this, if I get on a plane at 7:00 at night, some days I'm on and I'll continue doing work and I'll make it happen. But I know myself well enough to also know that I'll put on, have you ever heard of Gabriel? I think his name's Gabriel Anglais. His name's Fluffy. He's a comedian. Have you ever heard him?
Yes.
He's probably the funniest comedian I've ever heard in my life, and he's on Netflix at the moment. And so some days I'll literally just put one of his specials on, and I'll lose it. I'll be on the plane. I've got my noise cancelling headphones on, laughing my head off. And this is a little bit controversial, I think. A lot of people that I see in business, when they're starting out, they do a lot of relaxation time. I understand that, but the practicalities is when you're starting a business, or, you know, whenever you've got a business, but especially in the early stages, you don't really have the luxury to do that, because if you don't do it, no one else is going to do it. So for me, it's at different stages. So like when we're really in the grunt stage, like really like deep diving into the business at the start, we're working 7 days a week, and we might take, one morning I might just wake up and say, I can't actually work this morning. And I'll literally just go for a walk, or I'll just do something. But by 10 a.m. I'm back in the office. Or I can't just wake up one day and say, oh, I don't feel like traveling today. I might not go to the airport.
Yeah.
I have to do what I have to do. So practically, it's about knowing what your limits are. And when I say limits, I mean genuine limits, not what you think your limit is. Like, find where your limits are, where you stop being productive, and then come back 1% from there. I believe in working very hard. I also believe in having a lot of fun. Yeah. But I believe in working really hard, because we want to grow hundreds of millions of dollars in our businesses. Yes. And we're not shy about that. We don't want to run small businesses. So we do work massive hours, but we know ourselves. So we'll take a day. So practically, it's about knowing your genuine limits. And then this is if you really want to grow. If you want a lifestyle business, go for it. Relax. Do something to teach.
Yep.
But if you really want to grow a big business, it's knowing your limit and then coming back 1% from your limit, but actually finding that limit. It took me about 5 years to find what my limit was.
Yeah. Interesting distinction, because I find observing some people that they want the lifestyle side of business, but then their actions aren't reflective of getting, to a point. They're kind of, they want their business to be bigger and better, but they want the lifestyle straight away. And you're like, well, either pick one, or you got to work hard and get it to a point where you perhaps can have that. And there's no doubt, from a youngster, and especially in university years of being, a yes man and will make it happen, and then putting in the work and the processes, like you said, to bring it to life. And now you've scaled multiple businesses, multi-millions of dollars, and you're not even 30. Unbelievable. I just in awe of your journey. But if you can kind of look at businesses and your skill set you've developed, what are some of the key principles that you have to scale a business? When you go in, you get a business, what are some of the things you look to take a business from where it's at to where you think you can take it?
So are we talking about this from my perspective of coming into a business, or from starting a business?
Yeah.
Which element you want to?
Yeah, good point. I'd say if you walked into a business that's already going, it's already operational with a team, they've already got clients in there, they're billing, and you're looking to scale it, perhaps it's even some of the businesses you're now working with. What sort of things do you do at the very beginning of that journey of whether you're an investor, a partner on the board, to look at scaling it?
So the first thing is, on that basis, is looking at who's in the business. No matter if it's a tech business, if it's an IoT play, if it's hospitality, if it's services, if it's professional services, it's who's in the business. We can actually tell very quickly if someone's going to grow a business or if they're not. And it's their ability to execute. That's the number one thing we look at. Okay, so if we sit down and we put together a plan, and they don't execute the plan when they said they were going to execute it, then there's a high chance that they're a business that isn't going to reach their goals. But if we sit down and we put a plan in place, and it's normally the owner. When you're talking with small to medium enterprises, it's normally the owner or the leader or the founder of the company or the group that founded it or lead it. It's their ability to execute. So that's the first thing. So we've got businesses in every spectrum. if you're in a competitive space, you have to have a strong brand. And by brand, I'm not talking about logos and websites. I'm talking about what your brand actually stands for. And in brand, I'm talking about everything from when you first make contact to them to when you put your proposal together, when you deliver the service, when you invoice them. So that's a massive thing. How do you invoice them? How do you take payment? Is it easy?
Right.
Are you going to make someone send in a check, or are you going to make someone fill out a remittance slip at the bottom? Come on, we've got zero now. Let's just make it easy.
Yeah.
Let's let them pay by. And the brand for me is that whole thing. So the second thing we look at is the brand. So what is that feel that the business is really looking at that it's got down the road? So it's how does it actually build? How is the brand developed? And how is it delivered? The third thing that we look at is the space that it's in. So the space that it's in, we like to look at spaces where there's potential to scale. And then the fourth is the mechanics of the business. It's okay, who actually does the work? Who are they? How does it get done? How much do we charge? But that comes after everything else. So I guess in essence, that's what we look at. But the number one thing you'll keep hearing me hark on about is the people within the business.
Yeah, how interesting. And maybe I'm biased here, but I'm picking a theme of application, execution, the ability
100%.
of the leader to be able to take something and do it and learn along the way. And I think it speaks to the point where you raised earlier, sometimes people are thinking too much about it, and you just got to do it and learn along the way, refine along the way. Wow.
If I look at my journey of the first company that I built, the stuff that we did was insane. Like literally the hours we worked and everything we did, like everyone just thinks it happens. I guarantee you behind any business that's had any form of success in this day and age, there is someone or there is some people behind it that are working harder than anyone you know to push that business forward. It's cause and effect. I'm yet to meet someone that's really successful that's built a successful business that hasn't worked their ass off to get there. It's as simple as that.
How interesting. It's plan the work the plan. Like you're
100% perfectly put.
I love it. Man, it's an incredible journey you've been on and up until this point. And I love the fact that you're just elbow grease, get in there, make it happen sort of a guy. Because sometimes I think, we're talking to health professionals, much like yourself with a legal background, that intellectually we're a very switched on community, but sometimes when it comes to business, you get caught up trying to theorize or strategize too much, think about it. But you just got to get some rubber on the road and learn. So I love that. 100%. If nothing else, I think if people can get from this, take action. Do it.
Definitely.
Man, that's been an incredible 100%. Insight. If there's one thing that, let's start with a young business operator. And I say young in that they're perhaps starting their business journey. They're just launching. You think back to when you just started, what's one piece of advice that you would give that person who's out there, they're just launching or they've just launched?
I know it's a one piece, but let's do two because they entwine with each other. Yep. The first piece, because they're linked to each other, the first piece is make sure you're getting into business for the right reasons. So make sure that you're getting into business because you genuinely want to grow a business and that you're genuinely prepared to put in the work to build your business. And the right reason, by the way, there is no such thing as a wrong reason, I believe, other than to start a business to then put entrepreneur in your bio on Instagram. That's the only wrong reason that I'm aware of for starting a business because it just doesn't do anything for you. Yep. Second thing, which entwines with that, is if you're young and you're starting a business, you need to be prepared to be relatively isolated and try and surround yourself with other business owners that try and meet other business owners, network with other business owners, And it's solely because it's really difficult to talk to people when you're growing a business and when you're in your early stages about what's going on. Oh, I've got my BAS payable, or I didn't realize this GST was payable when I turned over 75,000. I've now turned over 130. I've now got 15 grand GST to pay. What do I do? Type thing. So to me, the second piece is on that. Make sure that you're prepared to be isolated and surround yourself with health professionals. Surround yourself in a community like yours. Surround yourself with people that have built it, have done it. I had some awesome mentors when I was building my businesses, because you'll lose all your friends. They'll think it's cool to start off with, but then they'll think, who's this guy? Like, he's getting annoying now. He keeps putting up posts about cleaning or about podiatry or health. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, they're like, why is this guy doing this? This is annoying. It doesn't, it's not sexy anymore. Yeah. So yeah, that's the second. It's be prepared to be isolated, but seek out people that you want to be around and be willing to be uncomfortable to seek out those people.
Yeah, I love it. And like you said as well in the start of this recording, around reaching out to people, because it's amazing who you can actually get in contact with.
Definitely. Just reach out, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. Send a letter. You know, the best way to reach out to someone is to send a letter, because no one sends letters anymore. Send a handwritten letter, saying, hey, can I meet with you on this day? And tell them to give you a call if they want to. And I guarantee you they'll read it.
It's a great way to do it. Very nice, Jordan. Thank you so much for your insights. If people want to connect with you or follow your journey, what's the best thing for them to do?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram. It's Jordan W. Walsh. That's my Instagram. I don't use it a hell of a lot anymore, but I still update it with some cool things we're doing. Or even feel free to email me personally, jordan@iconicgrowth.com.au. Feel free to flick me an email and I'll get back to you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. I think everyone here should tune in and watch the evolving journey of what Iconic is doing as a big brand now. You've got a couple of streams there which sound incredible. But thank you so much. If there's one takeaway that I have selfishly and personally, again, is just to keep actioning, keep hustling on those little things, putting it into play, working that plan. That's incredible. Thank you so much, Jordan.
Thanks very much for having me.
This is the Grow My Clinic podcast by Clinic Mastery, where we help you deliver amazing client experiences to grow your clinic.